There is a reason you start hard and disappear fast. It is not because you lack ambition. It is because you keep building your future around the version of yourself that feels powerful for 3 days. That man is not reliable. He appears when the pain is fresh, when the shame is loud, when the anger is strong enough to make you promise yourself that everything changes now. Then energy drops. Nobody claps. Nobody checks on you. Nobody cares that you are trying. And suddenly, the man who swore he was disciplined becomes the man who negotiates with distraction again. That is the trap. Motivation gives you a temporary identity before discipline gives you permanent evidence. Machiavelli would not ask whether you felt inspired. He would ask a colder question: what structure keeps you operational when desire disappears? Because power is not built by the man who begins violently. Power is built by the man who remains functional after motivation dies. And if you do not understand this, you will keep repeating the same humiliating cycle. You will start hard, disappear, feel shame, restart, disappear again. And slowly, without noticing it, you will teach yourself that your own word cannot be trusted. The problem is not your ambition. The problem is that your ambition has no government. A man without government inside himself becomes ruled by whatever is loudest in the moment. Fatigue becomes king. Distraction becomes advisor. Shame becomes executioner. Entertainment becomes escape. And the future becomes a place he keeps promising to visit, but never actually builds. Most men call this a discipline problem. That is too shallow. Discipline is not the first issue. Structure is. You do not vanish because you have no desire. You vanish because desire was the only thing holding the system together. When desire leaves, the system collapses because there was never a system. There was only a mood. There was only a moment. There was only the version of you that appears after pain embarrasses you enough to move. But a serious life cannot be built on embarrassment. It cannot be built on anger. It cannot be built on the temporary humiliation that makes you promise change at midnight. That energy is useful, but it is not sovereign. It can start the engine. It cannot drive the kingdom. Machiavelli understood this better than most modern men because he did not worship good intentions. He studied power under pressure. He studied states, rulers, soldiers, alliances, betrayal, fortune, timing, appearance, force, and collapse. He did not ask whether a ruler had beautiful feelings. He asked whether the ruler had foundations strong enough to survive reality. That is the question most men avoid. Not, do I want more? Of course you want more. Not, do I have pain? Of course you have pain. Not, do I feel misunderstood? Of course you feel misunderstood. The real question is colder. What foundation have you built that still operates when nobody believes in you, nobody encourages you, nobody rewards you, and nobody sees the private war you are fighting? Because if your future depends on being emotionally fed, your future belongs to famine. And famine always comes. There will be days when the pain is not sharp enough to push you. There will be nights when shame no longer scares you. There will be weeks when your dream feels far away, your body feels heavy, and your old life feels easier than your new identity. There will be evenings when nobody checks on you, nobody asks how the plan is going, nobody notices the small discipline you are trying to protect. And in that hour, motivation will not save you. Motivation is emotional permission. It whispers, now you may begin. Discipline is structural obligation. It says, begin whether permission arrives or not. That is the difference between the man who restarts and the man who compounds. The man who restarts needs a feeling. The man who compounds needs a trigger. The man who restarts needs pain to become loud. The man who compounds has already decided what happens when the pain becomes quiet. The man who restarts waits for his identity to feel real. The man who compounds creates evidence until the identity can no longer be denied. This is why most ambitious men stay trapped in the same loop for years. They do not lack dreams. They lack machinery. They do not lack hunger. They lack rules. They do not lack vision. They lack a repeatable process that forces vision into proof. Henry Ford did not change industry by walking into a factory and asking workers to feel more inspired. He built a system. In 1913, Ford introduced the moving assembly line at Highland Park. Work that once took 12.5 hours to assemble was reduced to 93 minutes. That is not motivation. That is structure. Ford did not scale emotion. He scaled process. He took effort, removed unnecessary friction, arranged the sequence, repeated the movement, and turned production into a machine. That is the lesson most unsupported men miss. You do not need another emotional high. You need a personal assembly line, a fixed time, a fixed trigger, a fixed minimum output, a fixed recovery rule. Not because you are weak, because your life is already full of forces competing against your future. Your job drains your strongest hours. Your phone fragments your attention. Your environment remembers the old version of you. Your family may not understand what you are building. Your friends may still see you as the man you were. Your body gets tired. Your mind looks for escape. And the world does not stop attacking your attention just because you made a promise to yourself. So if you enter the day with nothing but intention, you are already exposed. A man without a system has to negotiate every time he meets resistance. Should I work now? Do I feel ready? Maybe I should start tomorrow. Maybe I need more information. Maybe I need a better plan. Maybe I need to watch one more video. Maybe I need to wait until life calms down. This is where ambition is quietly murdered. Not by enemies, not by haters, not by the people who doubted you, but by negotiation. Every time your weakest self gets to reopen the case, your future goes back on trial. A system ends the trial before it begins. It does not make the work painless. It removes the need to debate whether the work will happen. That is why Ford matters. The assembly line did not ask every part of the factory how it felt. It moved. The next part moved. The next worker moved. The process forced continuity. And your life needs the same principle. The question is not, do I feel ready? The question is, what part of the machine moves next? Because the man without a system must keep begging his emotions for permission. The man with a system moves before permission arrives. This is not romantic. It is not glamorous. It is not the fantasy version of discipline where you wake up transformed and never struggle again. It is colder than that. It is better than that. Because fantasies collapse when the mood changes. Systems survive the mood. And this is where most men lie to themselves. They say they want discipline, but what they really want is the feeling of being disciplined. They want the rush of a new plan, the clean notebook, the new schedule, the public declaration, the private speech in the mirror, the sudden belief that everything is different now. But most of that is emotional theater. It gives you the reward of identity before you have paid the price of evidence. You feel like a disciplined man before you have created proof. You feel like a serious man before your routine has survived boredom. You feel like a new man before the old conditions have tested you. And because the feeling arrives early, you mistake it for transformation. Then the feeling fades. And when it fades, you discover the truth. Nothing was built beneath it. A strong start is not proof of discipline. A strong start often means emotion is high, pain is fresh, shame is loud, anger is available. The fantasy of a new identity feels alive. But a man is not revealed by what he does when emotion is feeding him. He is revealed by what remains when emotion leaves. Machiavelli understood this through the language of fortune. Fortune is the opening, the sudden chance, the painful insult, the breakup, the rejection, the humiliation, the job loss, the moment that wakes you up. Fortune can give you energy. But fortune changes, and if you rely entirely on fortune, you collapse when it changes. The lesson is simple. Your intense beginning is fortune. Your system is power. If there is no system, there is no kingdom, only a mood wearing a crown. This is why motivation is dangerous when it becomes your foundation. Not because motivation is useless. Motivation can be useful. It can start the first move. It can break the numbness. It can remind you what you refuse to become. But motivation is not loyal. It visits. It does not govern. It arrives when the wound is open, then disappears when the wound becomes familiar. A man who builds only when motivation visits is not disciplined. He is dependent. He has mistaken a guest for a ruler. And if your future depends on your mood is your ruler. Now understand the cost. If you keep repeating this cycle, you do not only lose time, you lose self-respect, you lose proof, you lose income, you lose reputation. You lose trust in your own word. And the most dangerous loss is not that other people stop believing in you. The real danger is that you stop believing yourself. Because once a man breaks enough promises to himself, he no longer needs enemies. His own history becomes evidence against him. Every unfinished project becomes a witness. Every abandoned routine becomes a record. Every restart becomes less inspiring because it carries the smell of the last collapse. At first you tell yourself this time is different. Then after enough failures, even you stop believing the speech. That is how strong years disappear. Not in one dramatic failure, but in small withdrawals from the future. A missed evening, a vague plan, a broken promise, a new beginning that only exists because the last one died. This is why discipline is not just a productivity issue. It is an identity issue. A man who cannot trust himself becomes easy to control. He needs other people to believe in him because he has not built enough evidence to believe himself. He needs applause because his internal proof is weak. He needs validation because his system has not produced continuity. He needs the world to confirm an identity he has not yet made undeniable. That is a dangerous position, because people judge what they can see. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." He was not saying appearance is morally superior to reality. He was saying appearance governs judgment before reality is ever examined. The world does not investigate your private potential. Your family judges your future through your past. Your friends judge your ambition through your current evidence. The market judges your value through visible proof. Society does not pause and say, "Let us deeply examine his internal struggle." It reacts to signals. This is why hidden potential has no power. This is why explaining your ambition too early often weakens you. You are asking people to respect a future they cannot verify. You are asking them to believe in a kingdom with no walls. And when you keep announcing new beginnings without producing visible evidence, you train people to discount your words. That may sound harsh. Good. It should sound harsh. Because harsh truth is useful when it cuts through fantasy, you may be underestimated, but you may also be unproven. Stop confusing the two. Being unsupported does not automatically make you strong. Being doubted does not automatically make you right. Being alone does not automatically make you disciplined. Pain gives you material. It does not build the structure for you. If pain automatically created power, every wounded man would be sovereign. But that is not what happens. Pain without structure becomes resentment. Isolation without output becomes decay. Ambition without proof becomes a private myth. The unsupported man has to understand this faster than everyone else, because he cannot afford the illusion that support will arrive first. No one is coming to enforce your future. No family pressure. No mentor standing over you. No applause for the invisible work. No safety net that makes experimentation easy. No rescue when your own routine collapses. So your system must do what support would have done. It must create pressure. It must create sequence. It must create consequence. It must tell the weaker version of you what to do before he starts negotiating. This is what I mean when I say a system is private government. Without private government, your life becomes a democracy of impulses. Fatigue gets a vote. Fear gets a vote. Distraction gets a vote. Loneliness gets a vote. Old habits get a vote. The phone gets a vote. And somehow your future, the thing that matters most, keeps losing the election. A serious man cannot allow every impulse to vote. He needs law. Not cruelty, not self-hatred, not panic, law. A fixed rule that does not need emotional permission. At this point, if this is forcing you to see your own pattern clearly, do not just consume it like another motivational piece. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave one sentence in the comments with the place where your discipline usually breaks, output, trigger, or recovery. Do not write a speech. Write the break. Naming the break is the first act of taking power back from it. Now we go deeper. Because a system is not only about doing more, sometimes power comes from doing less. Warren Buffett did not build Berkshire Hathaway by chasing every opportunity. He built power through disciplined refusal. Berkshire's 2025 shareholder materials describe Buffett through the Ted Williams analogy. Williams divided the strike zone into 77 segments and waited for pitches in his happy zone. The lesson was patience, judgment, and refusal. Buffett did not swing at everything. He waited for the right pitch. And Berkshire's annual materials show a compounded annual gain of 19.7% from 1965 to 2025, compared with 10.5% for the S&P 500 with dividends included. The result was not emotional excitement. It was compounding. Buffett did not win by doing everything. He won by knowing what not to do. Most men destroy their discipline because they try to turn their entire life around in one emotional explosion. New routine, new diet, new business, new identity, new schedule, new promises, new standards, new morning, new night, new personality. Then the system collapses under its own weight. They did not build discipline, they built a burden. They designed a routine for the man they wish they were, not the man who actually shows up after work, tired, irritated, unsupported, and tempted by escape. Buffett teaches the opposite. Power comes from selecting the few moves that matter and repeating them long enough for the world to feel the compound effect. Discipline is not doing everything. Discipline is repeating the few moves that create leverage. That sentence matters because it kills one of the most destructive illusions in self-improvement. The illusion that transformation means total life replacement. It does not. For most men, total life replacement becomes another form of escape. It feels powerful because it gives the mind a clean fantasy. But reality does not care how beautiful the plan looks. Reality asks one question: can this survive your worst day? Not your best day. Not the day after watching a powerful video. Not the morning after a painful argument. Not the night when shame is loud. Your worst day. The tired day. The ignored day. The day after work. The day nobody believes in you. The day your old life reaches for your throat. The day you do not feel chosen, seen, respected, or capable. If your discipline cannot survive that version of you, it is not a system. It is decoration. This is the turning point. You do not need maximum discipline first. you need minimum viable discipline. Minimum viable discipline is the smallest repeatable output that keeps your identity alive on your worst day. Not the largest routine you can imagine, not the most impressive plan you can announce, not the version that would make strangers admire you. The smallest repeatable output that prevents your identity from collapsing. For income, this could be one offer sent, one sales message written, one lead contacted, one useful post created, one skill session completed, one asset improved, one measurable unit of proof produced. Not 10 things. 1. Not a fantasy life overhaul. 1 unit of evidence. The minimum is not meant to impress the world. It is meant to prevent disappearance. This is where most men misunderstand the word minimum. They think minimum means weakness. No, minimum means continuity. Minimum means the floor does not break. Minimum means even when the day is ugly, your identity still receives one piece of evidence. And self-trust is not built through speeches. Self-trust is built when the nervous system sees proof that you return. Again, and again, and again, and again. A man who produces 1 unit of proof on a bad day is more dangerous than a man who produces 10 units only when the mood is perfect. Because the first man has continuity. The second man has weather, and weather cannot be trusted. This is where modern psychology confirms what Machiavelli understood politically. Peter Golwitz's research on implementation intentions shows that if-then planning helps people act on goals. A meta-analysis of 94 studies found a positive medium to large effect on goal achievement. The reason is simple. A vague man says, "I will work on my income." A strategic man says, "If dinner is finished, then I complete 25 minutes on one income-producing task before entertainment." The first man has desire. The second man has a trigger. The first man must negotiate. The second man already decided. And that is the entire war. Because your weakest self should never decide from 0. 0 is where excuses multiply. 0 is where fatigue becomes persuasive. 0 is where entertainment starts making arguments. 0 is where the mind says, "You deserve rest," but really means, "Abandon the future for tonight." A trigger protects you from 0. It does not make you superhuman. It makes you less available to sabotage. That is real discipline, not dramatic, not loud, not performative. Real discipline is often quiet, boring, and mechanical. It is the man sitting down after dinner for 25 minutes when nobody is watching. It is the man sending one offer when he wanted to numb himself. It is the man improving one asset when the world still sees no result. It is the man returning after a missed day without turning failure into theater. It is the man who understands that the future is not built by the strongest emotion, but by the most repeatable proof. And now the question becomes unavoidable. If motivation is unreliable, if intensity creates a false identity, if the world only respects proof, and if your weakest self should never decide from 0, then what exact system keeps output alive when motivation dies? The answer is not complicated. It is not easy, but it is not complicated. Your system needs 3 parts: an output floor, an if-then trigger, a recovery rule. If one of these is missing, your discipline becomes fragile. If your output floor is missing, you do not know what proof means. If your trigger is missing, you keep waiting for the right mood. If your recovery rule is missing, one missed day becomes a lost week, then a lost month, then another emotional restart. This is why most men do not fail once. They fail structurally. They build a routine with no flaw, no trigger, and no recovery. Then they act surprised when it collapses under pressure. A man who has no output flaw confuses motion with progress. He researches, he plans, he watches, he saves videos, he changes apps, he writes new goals. He organizes his notes, he buys another notebook, he tells himself he is preparing. But preparation that never becomes evidence is often fear wearing a productive mask. You are not building power because you thought about the move. You are building power when the move creates proof. Proof is visible. Proof can be counted. Proof can be reviewed. Proof can be improved. Proof can be shown to the market, to a client, to an employer, to an audience, or to yourself. This is why the first part of the system is the output flaw. Choose the smallest action that creates proof. Not planning, not researching, not watching another video. Proof. If your goal is income, your output flaw must touch value. It must create value, improve value, distribute value, sell value, or sharpen the skill that creates value. That could be one email, one offer, one post, one page, one product improvement, one portfolio update, one proposal, one sales message, one useful asset, one skill repetition, one measurable unit of proof. The rule is simple. Never let the day end without one visible unit of evidence. This does not mean every day must be heroic. Heroic routines are often fragile routines. This means every day must leave a trace. A man with no trace remains a theory. A man with visible proof becomes harder to dismiss. And this is where the unsupported man must become more intelligent than the supported man. A supported man can sometimes survive inefficiency because other structures carry him. Family money can carry him. A network can carry him. A patient environment can carry him. A forgiving safety net can carry him. But the unsupported man cannot build as if the world will absorb his collapse. He needs a smaller, sharper system because he has less margin for fantasy. He cannot afford routines designed for applause. He needs routines designed for survival under pressure. That is why your output flaw must be small enough to obey on your worst day, but real enough to create evidence. If it is too large, you will avoid it. If it is too vague, you will negotiate with it. If it is too private, it may become another form of hiding. The flaw must be concrete. Do not say, "I will work on my business." Say, "I will send one offer." Do not say, "I will improve my skills." Say, "I will complete 25 minutes of deliberate practice on one specific skill." Do not say, "I will create content." Say, "I will draft one useful post, one video idea, or one page of usable material." Do not say, "I will get my life together." That sentence has ruined more men than laziness. It is too large to obey. It gives the mind too many doors to escape through. A strategic man does not command himself with fog. He commands himself with precision. This is why the second part of the system is the if-then trigger. Your weakest self should never decide from zero. The decision must already be made before weakness arrives. A vague man says, "I will work when I have time." A strategic man says, "If I finish dinner, then I work 25 minutes on one income-producing task before entertainment." A vague man says, "I need to be more disciplined." A strategic man says, "If it is 7:30 in the evening, then my phone goes away and I produce one visible unit of proof." A vague man says, "I should stop wasting my nights." A strategic man says, "If I sit down after work, then I open the task list before I open any entertainment." The first man is asking his future to survive negotiation. The second man has removed negotiation from the critical moment. He has not removed difficulty. Do not misunderstand this. The trigger does not make the work feel easy. The trigger removes ambiguity. And ambiguity is where weak behavior hides. When there is no clear trigger, your mind can always argue, not now, after this. When I feel better, when the room is clean, when I know more, when the week resets, when I have a perfect plan, when life calms down. But life does not calm down for men who have no structure. Life becomes louder, responsibilities grow, pressure grows, fatigue grows, distractions multiply. And if you keep waiting for clean conditions, you will spend years calling delay preparation. Machiavelli wrote, "Men never behave well unless compelled." This is not comfort. This is realism. He was speaking politically, but the principle applies inward when handled correctly. Human nature drifts when it is not governed. Without pressure, law, necessity, and consequence, men move toward disorder. Now apply that to yourself. If there is no structure compelling output, your ambition becomes dependent on mood. And mood is a weak ruler. This does not mean you should hate yourself. It does not mean you should live in panic. It does not mean you should turn discipline into punishment. It means you must stop pretending that intention is enough. Intention has no teeth. A trigger has teeth. A consequence has teeth. A visible output flaw has teeth. A private law has teeth. A man who says, "I will work when I feel ready," has created no law. A man who says, "After dinner, before entertainment, I produce 1 unit of proof," has created internal government. That is the beginning of self-command. But even this is not enough, because no system survives without a recovery rule. This is the part most men ignore. They think discipline means never missing. That is childish. A disciplined man does not avoid failure perfectly. He prevents failure from becoming exile. Most men disappear, not because they miss one day. They disappear because one missed day becomes identity collapse. They miss once. Then shame speaks. You failed again. You are not serious. You always do this. You are back where you started. Then shame becomes hiding. Hiding becomes a week. A week becomes a month. A month becomes another dramatic restart. This is why men get trapped in emotional cycles. They do not have a recovery rule. They only have punishment rituals. They miss a day, then try to compensate with a huge plan. They break the routine, then write a new routine. They feel guilty, then make a speech. They collapse, then promise transformation again. But the serious man does not need another ceremony. He needs return. The recovery rule is this: if I miss one day, the next day I return to the minimum floor. No drama, no reset, no speech, no punishment ritual, no emotional confession, no new plan. Return. That word is more powerful than motivation. Return. Not because you feel proud. Return because the system says return. Return because the flaw exists. Return because a missed day is not permission to become a missing man. Return because identity is not protected by perfection. It is protected by recovery. Machiavelli writes in Discourses that all human affairs are in movement and cannot remain fixed. They must either rise or fall. Your discipline is the same. It is either being maintained or decaying. There is no neutral ground for long. A missed day is not fatal, but a missed day without a recovery rule begins decay. The recovery rule stops decay from becoming identity. It tells the weaker self, you may have interrupted the chain, but you do not get to leave the kingdom. This is what separates a setback from exile. And if you understand this, you stop worshipping perfect discipline. Perfect discipline is not the goal. Continuity is the goal. Because continuity creates proof. Proof creates trust. Trust creates leverage. Leverage creates options. Options create power. This is where discipline becomes economic. Most men think money follows suffering. It does not. Money does not care how much pain you carry. Money does not follow private ambition. Money does not follow the number of times you restarted. Money follows repeated proof of value. A man who cannot produce when motivation dies cannot reliably create market value. He may have talent, he may have ideas, he may have pain, he may have intelligence, he may have ambition. But if he cannot convert those things into repeatable output, he remains dependent. That is the chain. Income follows repeated value. Repeated value requires output. Output requires systems. Systems require minimum discipline. Break one link and you return to dependency. This is why starting hard and disappearing fast is not a small issue. It is not just about productivity, it is a power problem. Every time you disappear, you delay proof. Every time you delay proof, you delay leverage. Every time you delay leverage, you remain easier to ignore. This is why unsupported men must stop asking to be believed and start building evidence. Your family does not need to understand. Your friends do not need to approve. Society does not care that you are trying. The market does not reward the private war. It rewards visible value. It rewards repeated proof. It rewards what can be measured, trusted, used, purchased, shared, referred, hired, or negotiated with. That may feel unfair, but fairness is not the point. The point is power. Machiavelli did not write for men who wanted the world to be gentle. He wrote for those who needed to understand how power survives, and power survives through foundations, through arms, through order, through preparation, through perception, through timing, through the ability to act when fortune changes. For you, arms are not weapons. Your arms are skill, capital, reputation, proof, distribution, health, emotional control, and systems. Borrowed support is not power. Borrowed belief is not power. Borrowed motivation is not power. Borrowed approval is not power. All of these can be withdrawn. Your own arms are what remain when the room goes quiet. This is why you must stop building discipline on other people's belief. Do not build consistency on applause. Do not build confidence on validation. Do not build ambition on someone else finally understanding you. These are borrowed arms, and borrowed arms either fall from your back, weigh you down, or bind you. Your own arms are what you can produce alone. Your own arms are the skill you sharpen when nobody is watching. Your own arms are the proof you create when no one is clapping. Your own arms are the daily flaw that keeps identity alive when emotion disappears. Your own arms are the recovery rule that brings you back before shame turns into exile. This is the real transformation. You stop being the man who needs to feel powerful. You become the man whose system produces power. You stop being the man who announces change. You become the man who leaves evidence. You stop being the man who asks, "How do I stay motivated?" You become the man who asks, "What structure forces output when motivation dies?" That question changes everything, because it moves you from emotion to design, from shame to mechanism, from fantasy to proof, from waiting to governing, from abandoned to unowned. There is a difference. The abandoned man feels powerless because nobody came. The unowned man understands that nobody coming is exactly why he must build his own law. He does not turn loneliness into self-pity. He turns it into sequence. He does not turn doubt into complaint. He turns it into proof. He does not turn fatigue into permission to disappear. He turns fatigue into the test his minimum flaw was built for. This is why minimum viable discipline is not a small idea. It is the first government of the unsupported man. It says, even when the world gives me no pressure, I create my own. Even when nobody expects me to win, I produce evidence anyway. Even when my strongest self is absent, my weakest self still has a rule to obey. Even when I miss, I return. And over time, that return becomes identity. Not because you said it, because you proved it. The world does not reward your intentions. It rewards evidence. Your employer does not pay for your hidden potential. The market does not purchase your pain. People do not update their judgment because you explained yourself again. They update when the visible evidence makes their old judgment expensive. That is why proof matters. Potential is private. Proof is political. When you have no proof, people can ignore you without cost. They can doubt you without consequence. They can dismiss you without reconsidering. They can treat your ambition as a phase. But when proof compounds, disbelief becomes harder to maintain, not impossible. There will always be people who refuse to see you clearly. That is irrelevant. The goal is not universal approval. The goal is leverage. The goal is options. The goal is to become less dependent on the judgment of people who do not control the path. And this is where many men must face an ugly truth. They say they want freedom, but they keep chasing recognition before proof. They want family to understand before they have evidence. They want friends to respect the plan before the plan has produced anything. They want the market to reward effort before the value is visible. They want to be treated like the future version of themselves while still living on the evidence of the old one. This is why they feel humiliated. They are asking reality for credit. But power does not run on credit. Power runs on proof. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are." This is not a complaint. It is an operating law. People see signals first. They see output. They see consistency. They see income. They see skill. They see reputation. They see whether your words keep becoming real. The private man inside you may be more capable than the world knows. But the world cannot use what you have not made visible. So stop being angry that people do not believe in a man they cannot verify. Build the verification. That is colder. That is cleaner. That is more useful. If your future depends on people understanding your potential before you have proof, you will remain emotionally dependent on their permission. But if your future depends on a system that produces proof daily, their permission becomes less relevant. This is the power shift. From needing belief to producing evidence, from explaining to building, from restarting to returning, from motivation to structure, from private ambition to public proof. Now, if you are the kind of man who knows he has consumed enough theory, stop confusing learning with movement. You already know motivation dies. You already know another video will not save you if your system remains vague. Your problem is not a lack of information. Your problem is that your output, trigger, and recovery rule are not sharp enough to survive your weakest hours. If you keep collecting ideas without building a floor, you will stay intelligent and ineffective. Inside Patreon, you get the deeper minimum viable discipline system, practical breakdowns, and exclusive unfiltered content designed to help you turn isolation into structure, structure into proof, and proof into leverage. This is not for men who want entertainment disguised as self-improvement. It is for men who are finished begging their mood for permission. The decision is yours. And understand this before you move on. The system only works if it becomes specific today, not someday, not when life is calmer, not when your confidence returns. Today. Choose one output floor. Choose one trigger. Choose one recovery rule. Write them clearly. The output floor answers, what proof must exist before the day ends? The trigger answers, when does the work begin without negotiation? The recovery rule answers, what happens after I miss? If you cannot answer those three questions, you do not have discipline yet. You have desire. Desire is not enough. Desire is a flame. Structure is a flame. Structure is a furnace. A flame can inspire you. A furnace can produce heat every day. This is the difference between intensity and power. Intensity feels strong because it burns quickly. Power feels different. Power is quieter. Power repeats. Power returns. Power does not need to announce itself every morning. Power is the man who has one rule and obeys it long enough for reality to change. This is how you rebuild self-trust. Not through self-talk, not through another promise, not through trying to feel worthy before action. Self-trust is earned by becoming a man who sees evidence of his own return. Every day you complete the floor, you cast a vote for the man you are becoming. Every time you obey the trigger, you weaken the government of impulse. Every time you use the recovery rule, you teach shame that it no longer controls the story. Eventually, your identity changes. You are no longer the man who starts hard. You are no longer the man who disappears when the mood dies. You are no longer the man who needs pain to become serious. You become the man who continues. That may sound simple. It is not common. Most men are addicted to beginnings because beginnings are emotionally clean. Beginnings let you imagine a future without confronting the evidence of your past. Beginnings give you the pleasure of identity without the boredom of maintenance. But power is not built in the beginning. Power is built after the beginning stops feeling special. Power is built on the ordinary night, the tired night, the ignored night, the nights when nobody would know if you quit, the nights when the old version of you offers comfort, the night when you do the minimum anyway. That is where discipline becomes real. And that is where the unsupported man becomes dangerous. Not dangerous to people, dangerous to the old pattern, dangerous to the identity that needed approval, dangerous to the cycle of starting, vanishing, and restarting, dangerous to the life that expected him to remain inconsistent. If this video gave you the exact break in your system, do not leave it as another private realization. Like the video, subscribe to this channel, and comment the one minimum output you will complete for the next 7 days. Not a fantasy routine, one unit of proof. Put it where you can see it, because in the end, the world does not care how serious you felt when you began. It cares what remains. Do not build your future around the version of you that only exists when pain is loud. Build it around the tired version, the ignored version, the unsupported version, the unsupported version, the version nobody checks on. Motivation will die. Let it. If the system remains, you remain. Before you tell yourself you lack discipline, diagnose the system. Is the output too large? Is the trigger too vague? Is your recovery rule missing? Are you confusing planning with proof? Are you building around motivation instead of structure? Start there. The man who cannot identify the break will keep worshipping motivation and repeating the same failure. The man who identifies the break can begin to govern himself. And once a man can govern himself, he no longer needs the world to constantly feed his identity. He builds proof, he builds leverage, he builds options. He builds the kind of evidence that changes how he sees himself before it changes how the world sees him. That is the final law. Motivation creates the first move. Systems keep the move alive. Discipline is proven only after motivation disappears. Stop starting hard. Start becoming impossible to interrupt.